After the discussion of the stock market and some of the issues related to the stock market, then we can move towards the another market that is in today's context is quite important, that is called the derivatives market. So what exactly the derivatives market is? So whenever you talk about the derivatives market, it is basically nothing but the payoff or the price of that particular kind of security which are traded in the derivatives market generally depends on some of the other fundamental good which are traded in the spot market. That means if the price of the spot market will change, accordingly the value of the instrument which are traded in the derivatives market will change. So if it is this particular fundamental good or fundamental product is a commodity like grains, coffee, gold, silver, and all these things, we can call it the commodity derivatives. Or if the particular product is the financial market instruments like stocks, bonds, and all these things, we can call it the financial derivatives. That means the price of that particular security will change depending upon the change of the price of the spot market. So that is the basic notion of the derivatives. Let me give you one example what exactly how we can explain the derivatives market. Let you want to buy potato. So if you are buying potato, let you want to buy it in the month of December and you are ready to pay 10 rupees per kg, expecting that in the market the price of the potato will be higher in that particular point of time. So that's why you want to lock the price at 10 rupees per kg. So then what you can do, you can look for a particular seller who wants to sell the potato at a price of 10 rupees in the month of December. So then you send your requirement to the stock exchange and let there is another seller who is ready to sell the potato at a price of 10 rupees in the month of December. So he also sends his requirement and all these things to the stock exchange. So if the price will match and a particular time period or a particular date, this contract basically has been materialized and the seller will basically provide this particular commodity to you and you will pay the 10 rupees per kg. But for example, in that particular point of time, the market price of the potato is 12 rupees. So it is a gain for the buyer because the notional gain basically per kg will be 2 rupees because you have already signed the contract that okay, the particular potato will be given to you or supplied to you at a price of 10. So per kg 2 rupees basically notional gain you can generate. And it is a loss to the seller if seller could have sold that particular product in the market in that particular point of time, he could have got 12 rupees per kg. Now he is bound to sell the potato at a price of 10 rupees. It can also happen in the reverse way. Let in the price of the potato in December will be 8 rupees. And now the seller is selling at a price of 10 rupees because it already designed or already as per the contract, the price has been fixed. So in that case, the seller will be the gainer and the buyer will be in the notional loser. So that's why the major use of the derivatives contract is to hedge your risk in the market. So you are basically able to lock the price today and that price you will pay or that price will be utilized whenever this contract will be exercised. So that is in a general sense, we can define this derivatives contract. This is the simple example, whatever I have given. So here, the price of that particular contract or price of that particular or the profit, whatever you are going to generate from that particular contract, that depends upon the market price of that particular product at that particular point of time. Is it clear? Yes. Devika, Dev, is it clear or not?
Yes. Yes, sir.
So that means you are basically fix the price from the beginning. So that is the price what on which you are locked this particular contract. And by that, sometimes you are gainer, sometimes you may be loser. That depends upon the price fluctuations or the market price fluctuations of that particular product. So here we have taken the example of potato. Here the fundamental good is potato. So the fundamental good can be a stock. The fundamental good can be a bond. So depending upon the fundamental good, the derivatives contract can be defined or can be always explained. So that is the basic notion of the derivatives. So there are different types of the contracts, derivatives contract, which are traded in the market. So already you might have aware about the names. We have the forward contracts or forwards. We have the futures. We have the options. We have the swaps. So these are the major type of derivatives instruments which are basically traded in the market. So what is a forward contract? So forward contract is basically a kind of customized contract between the two parties, buyer and seller, where the settlement takes place on a specific date in the future at today's pre-agreed price. The example whatever I have given. The pre-agreed price is 10 rupees per kg. So that price is fixed today, but the contract will be materialized, your contract will be exercised in the month of December. So the forward contract is also same with the future contract. The characteristics, if you look at, so future contract is also an agreement between the two parties to buy or sell an asset at a particular time in the future at a certain price. But only difference is between the forward contract and the future contract. In the forward contract, if you see, it is a private contract between the two parties. It is not standardized in that sense. So it is between you and me, or you, one buyer and one seller. So they can come into this particular contract, and accordingly this contract will be materialized or contract will be exercised. But whenever you talk about the future contract is exchange traded. So that means it is highly standardized. It is a standard contract. Okay. And whenever it is a forward contract, the forward contract will be settled at the time of maturity. Whenever the contract will be matured in a particular date, the settlement will take place. But the future contract can be settled daily depending upon the market price fluctuations. The settlement can take place daily basis whenever we are talking about the future contract. But in the forward contract, this particular settlement will take place only at the time of maturity. So here, another thing, if you observe, whenever you go for the forward contract, there is some credit risk involved. The contract may not be exercised, or there may be some kind of failure can happen with respect to the forward contract, because There is no third party involved in that. But whenever you talk about the future contract has no such kind of risk, because the stock exchange or the exchange where the particular exchange where this particular contract is basically traded, he is responsible for that. So more or less, the credit risk of the future contract is almost negligible, almost zero. There is no credit risk. But whenever we talk about the forward contract, there is a possibility of credit risk, because the contract may not fulfill the desired requirements, because the contract has been designed between the two parties only. So then whenever we talk about the another type of contract, that is called options. The options are basically two types mostly. One is called the call option, other one is called the put option. The options are basically two types. One is, we call it the call option, other one is the put option. So there are two types of options which are basically traded in the market or generally available in the market. In terms of theoretical sense, what actually I am telling. So whenever the contract is, whenever you talk about the options, whenever you talk about the call option basically gives the holder, if you are holding a call option, it is basically provides the holder the right, but not the obligation to buy a given quantity of the underlying assets. It gives the holder the right, but not the obligation to buy a given quantity of the underlying asset at a given price on or before this future date. That means you have the right to exercise that particular contract, but it is, you are not obliged to go for the contract. Let me give you, not exactly this is an option, but in what sense it is used. For example, whenever you go to the market, let you want to buy a product and you don't have the money, enough money to buy the product. Then what you are doing, you are paying, let the product price is 100 rupees. So you don't have the 100 rupees. What you will do, you tell the seller that, okay, I don't have the 100 rupees. Tomorrow I will come and buy the product. You take 5 rupees from me and keep the product available for me for tomorrow. I will come tomorrow and I will pay this 95 rupees and take this product. So tomorrow you may go and buy the product, or you may not also go, but you have the right. So if you don't go, your 5 rupees is gone. You will not get back that 5 rupees. But if you talk about the seller point of view, he has to keep that particular product for you, because already he has taken 5 rupees from you and he has promised that, okay, he will sell the product at a price of 100 rupees. So he cannot sell that particular product. So tomorrow whenever you will go, he will take another 95 rupees and give you the product. So if you don't go, then this particular option is not available for you, and that 5 rupees you have to forgo. So that's why the call option provides the right, but not the obligation to buy a given quantity for an underlying asset at a given price on or before this particular date. A date has been fixed. But if you talk about the put option basically gives this holder the right to sell a product. It gives the holder a right to sell a given quantity of the underlying asset at a given price on or before the given date. So call option basically is for to buy the product. It gives the right to buy the product, and put option basically gives the right the holder to sell a product. And again, the options also can be categorized into two ways. One is called the American option and another one is called the European option. It is within the call option and the put option. The American option can be exercised at any time during its life. So there is no such fixed maturity period of the American option. The American option can be exercised at any point of time during its life. But whenever you talk about the European option basically only can be exercised at the time of maturity. At whatever date has been fixed, only on that date this particular option will be exercised. The American options can be exercised at any point of time during the life of that particular contract. So this is basically the another classification you can make. It can be American call option or American put option, or it can be European call option. It can be European put option. So these are the different type of options which are available, and conceptually this is the way we can categorize, we can differentiate the different options which are traded in the market. Then we have the swap. What is the swap? Swap is basically a kind of agreement between the two parties to exchange the cash flow, in the future according to a pre-arranged formula. Already they have said that how the cash flow will basically take place. Who will pay at a fixed rate, who will pay at a floating rate. So all kind of things are basically fixed in the beginning, and in accordance with that, the particular cash flow will take place. So popularly, if you see in the market, we have broadly or generally, we have two types of swaps which are traded. One is called the interest rate swap, and another one is your currency swap. Another one is your currency swap. So these are the two different type of swaps which are traded in the market. So whenever we talk about the interest rate swap, it is basically swapping of the interest related cash flows between the two parties in the same currency. Somebody is playing on the basis of the fixed rate, somebody is paying on the basis of the floating rate. That we will explain further. But you just keep in the mind that swap is basically a kind of agreement between the two parties to exchange the cash flow. So if it is interest rate swap, then the particular cash flow is related to the interest payments. And here there is no exchange of the principal. There is no exchange of the principals. The amount, the notional amount, whatever you have fixed from the beginning on which the interest rates will be paid, that is not going to take place. The principals are not basically transacted there. There is no cash flow involved with respect to the principal. But whenever you go for a currency swap, it basically the swapping of both principal and as well as the interest between the two parties. And they are in the different currency. They are in the different currency. So that is the basic. Here, this interest rate swap, there is no such principal is involved with respect to the cash flow. But in the currency swap, basically always this kind of things is involved, and the principal is also involved in the cash flow context. So here, what basically we have seen, if you see the some of the words or some of the concepts what we use, the buyer is always takes the long position. The long position means it is the buying position, and the seller has a short position. We call it the short position. So buying means it is the long, selling means it is the short. So the act of buying is basically called going long, and the act of selling is basically called the going short. That actually you can keep in the mind. Okay. And there are different other concepts, like you can keep another concept that is called the strike price. The strike price means the price at which the agreement has been made. The price at which the agreement has been made, at what price this particular contract will be exercised. So in the example, whatever we have taken, the 10 rupees is called as the strike price. Okay. So that also you can keep in the mind. And the settlement price, basically what we look at depending upon the market fluctuations. It is basically the price just before the final bell of the particular day. So that price will fluctuate depending upon the market fluctuations or market trading. So here, what basically here we have to keep in the mind that these are the different things what basically you can keep in the mind whenever you start trading in the stock or derivatives market, basically in general. So if you see that derivatives market has lot of uses. So whenever you talk about this long contract, long forward contract, short forward contract, and all these things, so then how basically the profit you can generate? For example, if I say that if I go for a profit diagram for the long forward position, long forward contract. If you go for a long forward position, I'll talk about this. This is your maturity. It will go like this, and it is the price of underlying asset, price of the particular asset on which the derivatives is based upon, the price of underlying asset. This is your strike price. So then and this is your profit. This is your profit. Then how the profit diagram basically looks like, because it is a long forward contract you are buying. So if you are buying, then more the price, it is better for you. More the price, it is better for you. So that's why the forward contract will go like this. If the market price is exactly equal to the strike price, the K is the strike price. If it is exactly equal to the strike price, then there is no profit. Profit is zero. But if the market price is above the strike price, okay, so in that context, you are able to generate some positive profit. So if the market price is below the strike price or below this pre-agreed price, whatever you have fixed, then what you will observe that the profit is negative. The profit is negative. So more the market price, if you are going for a long position, then you are able to generate the positive profit from that particular contract. Just now, if the market price is 12 rupees and you are a buyer, then what basically you can say that the market price already fixed is already the pre-agreed price K is equal to 10, but the market price is at 12, then you can generate 2 rupees profit per kilo, whatever example we have taken. So that's why the profit diagram basically goes in this particular way. But if you are going for a short forward position, that means you are going to sell, then your profit diagram, basically if this is your K, then your profit diagram basically goes like this. Lower the market price, it is basically better for you. Lower the market price, you can generate the more profit in that particular sense. So therefore, this is the payoff diagram for the forward contracts, what basically we can always see. Is it clear? Yes. Nitin?
Yes, sir.
Are you able to get or not?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is the way this we can show this payoff diagram for the long forward contract, and this is for your short forward contract. This is for your short forward contract. So higher the market price, this is better for or profit can be generated for the long forward contract positions, and the lower the market price, it is better for the short forward contract positions. Then we have another concept also we used in the market, that is called the basis. That is called the basis. Basis basically is a concept which shows the relationship between the spot price and the future price of that particular asset. The spot price and the future price of that particular asset. That means your basis is nothing but the spot price minus the future price. Basis is nothing but the current spot price minus the future price. So in a normal market, if you see, in a normal market, in general, the prices for the more distance futures are higher than the nearby futures. In a normal market, the price of the distance futures, for example, you are talking about a particular contract, future price contract for 2 months, and another contract is for which is going to mature after 1 month. Then the price of 2 months contract should be more than the price of the 1 month contract. So in general, what you can say that your future price should be greater than the current spot price. Should be. It is generally we call it, if this thing happens, then we call it is a normal market. And there is a inverted market where it is reverse. Your distance future contract prices are lower than the prices for the contracts which is nearer to the expiration, or we can say that the future price is less than the spot price. So whenever we trade in the market, so always you will find that there is a basis risk involved, and this basis risk is basically happens because of the what we can say the difference between the future price and the spot price. And there is another concept we use in the market also, that is called spread. What is spread? The spread is basically the difference between the two future prices. Difference between the two future prices. If the two prices for if the two prices are for the future contracts on the same underlying good, let you are taking a stock. Stock is the underlying commodity, underlying asset, and the one particular contract is matured after 2 months, and another contract is matured after 3 months. So then, and also we will find that it is the underlying asset is same, expiration dates are different. One is expired in 2 months, another is going to mature in 3 months. Then there is a price difference between these two, and that price difference is called the intra-commodity spread. The intra-commodity spread. So that means the price of the 3 months contract and the difference between the price of the 3 months contract and price of the 2 months contract, that difference is called the intra-commodity spread. And we have also the another spread called the inter-commodity spread. Here, the underlying asset is basically different. Let this is stock 1, this is stock 2, and here maybe the expiration date is same for both the stocks, 2 months, and if there is a price difference between that, that is called the inter-commodity spread. So these are the another kind of concept basically you have to keep in the mind. So whenever we are going for the trading in the market, okay, always how basically we can use this kind of concepts whenever we invest in the derivatives market, right? So generally, for example, if you go for a kind of hedging, basically already I told you, the derivatives instruments are used for the hedging. And whenever you go for the hedging, we can go for a long hedge and we can also go for a short hedge. Okay. And when the long hedge will be appropriate? When the long future hedge is appropriate? The long future hedge is appropriate when you know you will purchase an asset in the future and want to lock the price. You want to purchase the asset in the future and you want to lock the price now. So then we call it the long future hedge. And another one is your short future hedge. Here it is basically appropriate when you know that you will sell the asset in the future. Sell the asset in the future and you want to lock the price now. So let us take one example. Okay, a long hedge basically involves purchasing a future contract. Long hedge basically involves purchasing a future contract. There is a company, there is a film manufacturing company. For example, there is a film manufacturing company. So they need silver in the future, which basically they need the silver in the future. Then what they will do, they will purchase a future contract for the silver. Silver is the underlying asset here. They will purchase a future contract for the silver. Then in that case, what they will do, the company will know with certainty that how much it will have to pay for the silver in the future. So that means in that process, they can reduce the risk. Suppose the film manufacturer needs around 50,000 kilo of the silver in 2 months. Assume in 2 months time, they need this 50,000 kg of silver in 2 months for assumption. And let the silver prices are given a particular date. Silver future prices are available in the stock exchange. The silver future prices, let for example, in the month of May, let May 10. Okay. So here, if you see this contract, how basically this it is given, it is let per kilo it is given. Then there is a spot price which is available in the market. Let it is 1052. Let in the month of July, the price will be 1068. In the month of September, the future price is quoted, that is let 1084. This is a normal market. Then what this manufacturer basically will do, the manufacturer basically estimates that to pay a higher price, higher than 1068, maybe that will basically affect their profitability. So that's why the company basically enters the future market to hedge against the possibility of higher silver prices. Against the possibility of the higher silver prices. Then how this transaction basically will take place between them. Let me give you that transaction in the month of May 10, in the date May 10. And we have two markets here. We have two cash market, we have the future market. Then what will happen in the May 10? This manufacturer feels that or anticipates the need for the 50,000 kilo of the silver in 2 months and expects to pay 1068 per kg, $1068 per kg. So that means their total value of 1068 into 50,000. So you'll find a X value, right? So in that particular time, what they will do, they will buy some July future contract, let per contract size is let 1000 kilo. Per contract size is 1000 kilo. So they will go for 5,000 contracts. 5,000 contracts. So okay, sorry, it is maybe you can say that it is contract size is 10 kilo because they need 50,000. For contract size is let 10 kilo. So they will go for the 5,000 contracts for the July future contract at a price of 1068. So then in the July 10, exactly what has happened. Let the spot price of the silver on that day is 1071 in the cash market. So if the buyer will buy this 1071 rupees, then 1071 into 50,000, they will pay let Y amount. And this Y amount will be greater than the X amount. Since the future contract is at maturity, because we know that the futures and the spot prices are equal at the time of maturity. So now what has happened, the contracts which are sold in that particular point of time. So then what will happen that whatever loss they will make in this particular market, the same amount of gain they will make in the spot market. So it is a kind of zero-sum game. So the total wealth change will be zero. So whatever loss they could have made in the cash market, the same particular gain they can make in the future market. So the net difference or net change in the wealth will be exactly zero. The same thing can also happen with respect to the short hedge positions. So if you are expecting to sell certain things in the market, then you can always go for a kind of, in the future you want to sell something, then you can go for a short hedge positions. But there are certain complexity. Happens in this hedging part, because the asset whose price is to be hedged may not be exactly the same as the asset underlying the future contract. And there may be also an uncertainty as the exact date when the asset will be bought or sold. So these are, maybe that particular future contract is not available against that particular asset. So then what will do? You are going to hedge the silver, but the silver basically is not available in that particular point of time. So in that case, this kind of complexity will arise. So now here, if you are going to choice of a contract, then choose a delivery month that is very much close to the life of this particular hedge. And if there is no future contract on the asset being hedged, and choose the contract whose future prices is most highly correlated with that asset price. Let the silver future contract price is not available in the market, in that particular market. Then you go for another asset which is highly correlated with silver, maybe gold. So if the underlying asset is different, then we can call it, this is basically called the cross hedging. This is basically, we call it the cross hedging. That means you are hedging something where the asset is not basically same. So that concept is called the cross hedging. So if you are going for a cross hedging, more or less you are able to also minimize the risk due to the fluctuations of the particular price in that particular market. Then we have another concept we called in the derivatives market, that is called the hedge ratio. So hedge ratio is what? It is the ratio of the size of the position taken in the future contract to the size of the exposure, whatever you are taking in the spot market. So when the asset underlying the future contract is the same as the asset being hedged, the hedge ratio may be equal to 1. But when the cross hedging is used, then it is basically not optimal. The hedge ratio equal to 1 is not optimal. So how we calculate this minimum variance hedge ratio? Generally, the hedge ratio or the minimum variance hedge ratio depends on the relationship between the change in the spot price and change in the future price. So the proportion of the exposure that should optimally be hedged, generally calculated as it is called the minimum variance hedge ratio. That means how much position you have to take in the future market to hedge your risk. The minimum variance hedge ratio, I will denote it as H star, that is basically rho, your standard deviation of the spot market price divided by the standard deviation of the future market price. So the sigma S, basically the standard deviation of your change in the spot price during the hedging period, and your sigma F is the standard deviation of the change in the future price during the hedging period. And the rho represents the correlation between your change in the spot price and change in the future price. Okay. So if you want to calculate the hedge effectiveness, okay, that can be defined as the proportion of the variance that is eliminated by hedging. How much risk is eliminated by the hedging? So how you can get this? If you regress between the spot price and the change in the spot price and change in the future price, whatever R square value, the goodness of the fit, your R square value will calculate. That means the value you will get, that is basically will give you the hedge effectiveness. But the problem here is that you have to find out the optimal, basic objective is you have to find out the optimal number of contracts. Optimal number of contracts. If you say that QA is the size of the position being hedged, and your QF is the size of one future contracts. These are all basically the units only. Then if you assume that your N star is equal to optimal number of contracts, for hedging, then generally your N star is equal to your H star into QA divided by your QF. For example, one airline company is there, they will purchase 2 million gallons of jet fuel in 1 month. And they want to hedge that risk using the heating oil futures. Heating oil futures. Let the jet fuel is not directly traded, so that's why they want to hedge it using the heating oil future contracts which are traded in the market. From the historical data, you have calculated the standard deviation of the F is let 0.0313, and the standard deviation of the delta S will be changed in the spot price, that will be 0.0263, and your correlation will be 0.928 between these two assets. Then you calculate your H star, that is 0.928 into your 0.0263 divided by your 0.0313. That means let you got 0.78. So in this case, let the size of the one heating oil contract, the size of one heating oil, one contract size is that 42,000 gallon. Then what is the optimal number of contracts you have to take in the future market? The optimal number of contract will be your 0.78 into your total is 2 million divided by your 42,000. So that around 37, round up to 37 contract. So you have to take 37 contract positions in the market to hedge that particular type of risk in the particular kind of to hedge the risk for change in the price of the particular jet fuel. You can also use this stocks and all these things whenever you go for this kind of hedging process. Whenever you go for the using this index futures and all, then you can always go for the to hedge the risk in a portfolio. The number of contracts that should be always sold is basically beta into your value of the assets divided by the value of the one future contract. So beta is the market beta with respect to that particular stock or particular index, and VA is the value of this particular portfolio, and VF is basically the value of the one future contract. So that is the way you can also go for hedging these index futures. So this is basically about how to use this particular kind of future contracts whenever you are using this hedging process. So here another thing also, the concept what we use in the derivatives market, whenever generally we go for the option trading, whenever we go for the options, we call it the option premium. Option premium. What is this option premium? Just now I have given one example that whenever you have bought this particular product whose price is 100 rupees and you have paid 5 rupees advance to him. So in that time, that 5 rupees is called basically premium. So whenever you entered the contract, particularly whenever you are going for the option contract, the buyer basically pays a premium to the seller in the beginning. So that is called the option price or the option premium. Because the buyer has the right, not the obligation. But the seller is obliged to sell that particular asset to you. So if this particular option will not be exercised, then the seller will be benefited out of that particular premium, whatever already you have paid to him. So the 5 rupees, whatever you have paid in my previous example, that is not basically paid to him. That is paid to him and he is not going to return that particular money to you. So that is the profit what the option seller will basically generate. So the price basically paid by the buyer to the seller or the writer is referred to as the option premium. And every option has an option price, one exercise price or the strike price, and one exercise date. Strike price and exercise price are the same. So they have also an exercise date. So the price paid by the buyer to the writer is called the option premium. The exercise price or the strike price is the price which is already specified in the contract at which the underlying asset can be purchased or be sold. And the exercise date is the last day the holder basically can exercise this particular option. It can be exercised before also if it is an American option, but if it is European option, then this can only be exercised only at the exercise date. Are you getting or not, Ray? Aman? Nobody is responding anything. Priyansa, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Are you getting or not?
Yes, sir.
Sure. Arey, exam
Yes,
कैसा
sir.
हुआ?
I didn't like revise the last portion properly, so little problem, but fine.
Which problem? Which portion?
Sir, that valuation of equity and after that.
Valuation of equity you didn't get.
Sir, I got, but I faced some problems in the test like that.
अच्छा अच्छा. Test में कुछ हुआ. Anyway, that see. Now I am talking about the today's class. Are you getting or not?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Ravi, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Is it okay? I'm little
Sir,
bit.
yes, sir.
बोलो.
Could you go a bit slower? I mean, all these topics are new for me.
That is
Forward
what
speaker.
actually I was trying to tell because we don't have much class left. So I know that I am going little bit faster. Anyway, if you have any doubt wherever, you just stop me. Okay, Ravi.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so here already I told you that whenever you go for the buying of the option, we have basically the you are taking a position in terms of call option. Then whenever you are selling, then you are basically it is basically. So that's why if I make a matrix, for example, let me ask you how you have understood. There is a option type, and you are basically the buyer of option. That means you are taking the long position, and there is a seller of the option, seller or writer, both names interchangeably we use of the option, and here basically it is called the short position. There is a call option and there is a put option. So if I make this kind of matrix here, can you tell me if you are buying a call option, then here I just give you one hint. If you are buying a call option, that means you have the right to buy the asset. You have the right to buy the asset, but you don't have the obligation. But if you are buying a put option, what does it mean? If you are buying a put option, what does it mean?
Right to sell the asset.
Right to sell the asset. You have a right to sell the asset. Good. So if you are selling a call option,
Obligation to sell the
obligation
asset.
to sell the asset. Obligation to sell the asset, right?
Yes.
And if you are selling a put option, then you have the obligation to
Obligation.
buy the asset. Buy the asset. So that actually you keep in the mind. So we have the long call, we have a short call, we have a long put, we have a short put. So there are different positions can be taken with respect to these options whenever we take the positions in the options market. So accordingly, your payoff will change depending upon the price fluctuations in the market. So here, if you look at, there is another concept involved with respect to the option market, that is called the moneyness. That is called moneyness. So what is the moneyness? The moneyness means if the option will be exercised, it is in the money. If the option is not exercised, it is out of the money. Let me give you a conditions. Then you can tell me. This is the condition. And you have the call option, you have the put option. I will denote the spot price is S and your strike price or exercise price is E. Spot price or the market price of the asset is S and the strike price is E. If I write S is greater than E, then your call option will be exercised or not? Tell me. Yes. If the market price is more than the exercise price, then the buyer will exercise the option or not?
Yes.
Yes, sir. He will.
Yes. So then it is in the money. If it is a put option, then it is out of the money. That means the option may not be exercised. Like that, if his S is less than E, then your call option is out of the money. And this will be in the money. If both are same, let S is equal to E, then it is at the money. This is at the money. Both cases, it is at the money. So if the particular option is in the money, whether it is a call option or put option, the option will be exercised. If it is out of the money, the option will not be exercised. And
Sir,
whenever
we are talking about option instruments, right? Or is this different?
option only. This
But
derivative,
these things are similar to that of bonds that we have discussed, right? Like
bonds
call
in the
option
sense,
and
call option,
like
put option, same thing. Actually, bonds and all these things, the bond is used as an underlying asset. It is then the option is related to, we call it a option. It is the option where the underlying asset is bond, and the option may be a stock option. It can be a bond option. It can be a interest rate option. So any options where the name depends upon the underlying asset, whatever you are using. The price of that particular option will depend upon the price of the underlying asset. Right?
yes, sir. Yes, sir. I got it.
Yeah. So whenever you go for the option premium, or premium whatever the buyer pays to the seller, this has two components. One is called the intrinsic value, or it is also called the parity value, and another one is called the time value. Okay. What is intrinsic value? The intrinsic value basically is the value by which the option is in the money. And if the option is out of the money, then the intrinsic value is 0. So for a call option, if you look at the above table, for a call option which is in the money, the intrinsic value is the excess of the underlying assets price over the exercise price. And for a put option which is in the money, the intrinsic value is basically the excess of the exercise price over the stock, over the underlying asset price. So whenever at what price this is in the money, then we can say that this is basically the intrinsic value of that. But I will give you one example. There is one option, and this exercise price is, let option 1 exercise price is 80, and the underlying asset price is 83.5 on that particular day, particular time. Then the option premium you are paid, that is let 6 rupees. Then the option is in the money or not? This option is in the money on that day or not?
Yes.
Yes, because the underlying asset price is more than the exercise price.
Yes.
Okay, so the option is in the money. So the option is in the money, then what is the intrinsic value? The intrinsic value is 83.5 minus 80, that is 3.5. And what is the time value of the particular option premium, the what already you have paid? That is your 6 minus 3.5, that is 2.5. Because this 6 rupees already you have paid. And for contract, you are generating a profit of 3.5. So the time value of that particular option is basically component is basically with respect to the premium is 2.5. If there is another option where the exercise price is 85 and it is 83.5, and let you have paid 2 rupees premium, then obviously if this is a call option, already we said this is out of the money. So your intrinsic value is 0. Then whatever premium you have paid, that whole premium is because of the time value of that particular option. Okay. So that actually you can always keep in the mind. So from the option investor's point of view, if you are the investor in the options market, always keep in the mind the call buyers always are bullish in nature. They always expect that the price of the underlying asset will go up. So they are bullish. But the call writer, who basically sells the call option, they expect that the price of the underlying asset will fall. So here also another thing I wanted to tell you, there are two types of options, whether it is call or put. We call it the covered call options or the naked call options. So if a call seller owns the asset underlying this particular call option, then it is said to have a covered call. That means this particular asset is owned by you. Already you are the investor, you have owned this asset and you want to basically want to sell that particular call option, then we call it as a covered call. But if a call option is written where the writer does not have the asset underlying this call option, then we call it the naked call. He wants to sell a particular option, but the asset is not owned by you. That at the time of delivery, you can borrow the asset, or you can get the asset from your broker or something like that. Then we call it is a naked call option or naked option. So there are two things. One is if it is exactly owned by you, already the asset is owned by you, we call it is a covered call or covered option. If the asset is not owned by you, then we call it is a naked option. And call buyers are always bullish in nature, and call sellers always expect that the price of the underlying asset will fall. Okay. Put buyers also feels that the market will be bearish, but the put seller always feels that the market will be bullish. So the buyer and seller's attitude basically change on the basis of the options positions what they take, or the positions what they take in the options market. Okay. So the put options basically will be a waste when the market price of the assets basically exceeds this exercise price, and the put buyers would like to see the prices always falling. So that's why their sellers like it the other way around. So that's why depending upon the position what we take, so your attitude or expectations about the market will change. That actually always we should think from the investment point of view. If I will tell you that how basically the profit diagram of the different positions looks like, if I give you the long call option, I will give you one call option. Let the option price is 5 rupees. Option price means it is the premium. It is the premium whatever you have paid. Then the strike price is 100. Okay. Then your time is it will expire in 2 months. And how this option or profit diagram will look like? Anybody can tell me? This is your profit. This is your stock price or the underlying asset price. And underlying asset is stock. How it will move? कैसे होगा? How the option payoff matrix will look, payoff diagram will look like? Anybody?
Above 105, it will be a profit.
Above 105, and you have paid 5 rupees is the premium. This is -5, right? Okay.
Yes, sir.
So it will go like this. This is 100, right? Yes or no?
Yes. Yes.
So this will go like this up to this. Then after that, if the price will again increase, then it will move like this. Am I right?
Yes,
or
sir.
no? Okay. So if the stock price will go on increasing, then accordingly your profit also is going to increase. But if I will go for a short call, कैसे दिखेगा?
Like exact mirror image with respect to x-axis.
Yes. So that means so this will be your 5. You got the 5 rupees. Yes or no?
Yes.
So this is 100. So this will go like this. So go like this. So this is the short call. If I tell you long put, you are buying a put option. I will give you the option price is 7 rupees and the strike price is 70. तो कैसे जाएगा? Yes,
Below 63, it will be a profit. And above 77, it will be, no, above 70, it will be
वो
constant
7
loss.
रुपीज कहाँ दिखाओगे? ऊपर दिखाओगे ना नीचे दिखाओगे? Long put
Long put 7 rupees down only.
down में देखें. It will be -7,
Yes.
right? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
It will be -7. Then generally let this is your 70. If this is your 70, then it will go like this. Control नहीं है रे. ठीक है. Is it okay? Yes or no?
Yes. Yes, sir.
So if it is a short put, it is just reverse. If it is a short put, then your 7 rupees will go above. So here it will be 7. Then let this will be 70. Then it will basically go like this. Okay, so these are the different payoff diagram you can always use whenever you are going for the what we can call it the option market or option exercise. So this is about the some of the concepts whatever I told. This is about the options. Then we have another major instrument we trade in the market, that is called the swap. And what exactly the swap is? Still now I have not gone to the pricing part, but first let us discuss about the concepts, then we can, if the time will permit, then we'll discuss something about the pricing part. So already I told you the swap is basically agreement between the two parties to exchange the cash flows in the future according to a pre-arranged formula. Okay. So that can be an interest rate swap or that can be a currency swap. Interest rate swap is quite popular. The interest rate swap is quite popular. So the most popular interest rate swap is basically we also call it the plain vanilla swap. Plain vanilla swap. Here, whenever it is a plain vanilla interest rate swap or interest rate swap generally always happens where the LIBOR, the London Interbank Offer Rate, is used as a reference rate, used as a variable exchange rate. This is used as a floating or variable exchange rate, interest rate, and there is a fixed rate. So in the interest rate swap, one company agrees to pay to another company a cash flow which is equal to the interest at a predetermined fixed rate on a notional principal. Why we call it the notional? Because the principal is not exercised, principal is not exchanged between the two parties. Only it is a notional principal on which the interest payments will be made for a predetermined number of years. And in return, it receives the interest at a floating rate on the same notional principal for the same period of time from the other company. So I will give you an example. Let here the floating rate is the LIBOR, and the LIBOR is nothing but is a London Interbank Offer Rate, that already you know. So generally it is the rate of interest at which the a bank with double A rating is able to borrow from the other bank. That is the condition basically they have fixed. So that is called the LIBOR. I'll give you an example. There is a consider a 10-year bond. We are talking about the interest rate swap. Okay. So there is a 10-year bond, and the rate of interest is let 6 months LIBOR plus 0.5% per annum. One party will pay as a fixed rate basis and another party will pay at a floating rate basis. So this is the floating rate. Okay. And life of the bond is divided into 20 periods. That means each 6 months. Every 6 months the cash flow will, frequency of the cash flow is 6 months. Okay. And the interest is paid at the end of the period. Interest paid end of the period. Every end of the 6 months, this interest will be paid. Okay. So for each period, the rate of interest is set at 0.5% per annum above the 6 months LIBOR at the beginning of the period, and that interest will be paid in the end of the period. So that is the way basically this contract is designed. So there is a swap. Basically, this is the for explanation basically what I told you. Generally, this is the way it works. There is a 3-year swap. There is a 3-year swap, which is initiated in the day March 15, 2016, for example, between the company X and Y. Company X and Y. Suppose X basically agrees to pay Y an interest rate of 5% per annum on a principal of notional principal of rupees 100 million. And Y agrees to pay X the 6 months LIBOR. 6 months LIBOR rate on the same principal, notional principal. So Y is basically a floating rate payer and X is basically a fixed rate player. He is paying at a fixed rate basis, that is 5% per annum, and Y is paying on the basis of the 6 months LIBOR basis. So X is the fixed rate pair and Y is the floating rate pair. And here also we assume that the payments are exchanged in every 6 months. The payments are basically made in every 6 months. Then how the cash flow basically will look like? Let to company X, for example. Let cash flows to company X. The Y is paying to X. So here, what basically will happen in March 15, 2016? Then obviously after 6 months, it is September 15, 2016. Then March 15, 2017. Then September 15, 2017. Then March 15, 2018. Then September 15, 2018. Then March 15, 2019. So these are the cash flow. This is the initiation date. March 15, 2016 is the initiation date. So the LIBOR rate, whenever this particular thing has happened, let it is 4.2%, it is 4.8, it is let 5.3, 5.5, 5.6, 5.9 and 6.4. So what is that floating rate cash flow? Every 6 months, this rate was fixed at 4.2 in the beginning of the March 15. So the first cash flow which will happen in the September 15, that will be the late half of that, because every 6 months only, annually it is 4.2%, it is 2.1, it will be 2.4. Here there is no cash flow, and it will be 2.65, and it will be 2.75, then it will be 2.8, and it will be 2.95. Okay. On the basis of this rate, the payment will be made. So it is like this. It is like this. Then the fixed rate, the fixed cash flow, what this X will basically pay to the Y, that is fixed at 5% per annum. So they will pay 2.5 million. So it will be minus because they will be paying 2.5 minus 2.5 minus 2.5 minus 2.5. So if you calculate the net cash flow, it is 0.4 minus 0.4 minus 0.1. This is 0.15, 0.25, 0.30, and 0.45. So this is the cash flow which will happen to the company X. So the principal itself is not exchanged. So that's why it is called the notional principal. If the notional principal were exchanged also at the end of the life of the swap, and it will not change the cash flow at all, because the notional principal is same for both fixed and floating payments. So exchanging this 100 million rupees and for 100 million rupees at the end of the life of the swap transaction have no financial implications. So that's why the principal is never exchanged in that. But why we go for this kind of exchange? What is the reason? What is the basic utility that one particular two companies will enter into this kind of swap contract? That is the basic question. The basic reason for the swap contract is the players wants to convert their liability, already existing liability, from fixed to the floating or from floating to the fixed. Or they can also change their asset or the investments from fixed rate to the floating or from floating to the fixed. We'll see that how basically this thing basically change their liability. Okay. I'll give one example that why basically somebody goes for this kind of contract. Let the company X, whatever example we have taken, let the company X has borrowed previously, has borrowed rupees 100 million from the another bank or other or from the market at LIBOR plus 0.1%. He's basically paying the interest at a rate of LIBOR plus 0.1%. But he is thinking that he's paying more. But he's not able to do anything with respect to that particular borrowing. He feels that if he will go for a kind of floating loan basis, then it will be profitable for him. So he wants to transform their floating rate loan into a fixed rate loan. But he is not able to do that thing with respect to the external borrower from where they have taken the loan. So in that particular point of time, they can enter into this kind of swap contract. So here, if you see their cash flow, now they are paying the loan payment, they're making, that is your LIBOR plus 0.1%, already they're paying. Now, whenever they have entered into that swap contract, under the swap, they're paying 5%. Okay. And under the swap, received under the swap is minus LIBOR. Okay. So they are paying this one and receiving this one. So this LIBOR will be cancelled out. Effectively, they are paying 5.1% per annum. Is it clear? Hello? Aman, Nikhil, sorry, Nitin?
Yes, sir.
हाँ बोलो रे.
Can you explain this part slightly, sir?
Let the company has already some borrowings. They have taken the loan from the market and they're paying an interest rate of LIBOR plus 0.1%. That means it is the floating rate loan. It is floating. It is changing frequently. And they want, this company wants to change their floating rate liability to a fixed rate liability, because they are feeling that the LIBOR rate is highly fluctuating and they are paying more. So if they go for the swap contract, whatever example we have started, if they will go for a swap contract, so here the X is the fixed rate pair and he is paying at a rate of 5%, and he is receiving the Y is the floating rate player and he is basically getting at a rate of LIBOR. Yes or no? This is what we have taken now from the beginning.
Yes, sir. Understood.
So now what has happened? He is paying LIBOR plus 0.1%, also paying 5%, but receiving LIBOR. So if the LIBOR will be cancelled, then effectively now their net payment will be a fixed rate or not?
Yes, sir.
It has become 5.1%. Okay.
Yes.
So their liability, which was floating basis, now it has been converted into the fixed basis. And the Y also should have, the swap will happen whenever they have the common interest. So let Y has a fixed rate loan, they want to change in the floating, that has to happen also. And now let Y has a 3 years loan on which he is paying the loan payment rate, it is for X. For Y you assume, let already they have some liability, loan payment they are making, which is fixed rate basis, let it is 5.2%. And under swap, they are paying LIBOR. And what they are receiving? They are receiving basically is 5%. So effectively the net payment will be LIBOR plus 0.2%. So here Y is interest from fixed to floating. Their change from their liability from fixed to floating, that has been fulfilled. And here also the X objective changing from floating to the fixed, that also has been fulfilled. So the same thing can also happen with respect to the transforming their assets. Let the company X owns a bond of 100 million, will provide 4.7% per annum over the next 3 years. So if the company X will enter into the swap, so now they are earning basically investment income is 4.7%. They're paying minus 5%, receiving plus LIBOR. So effectively your net income will be LIBOR minus 0.3%. So it is also, this is what basically will happen whenever they will go for this kind of swap. So either nature of the asset or nature of the liability, that can be changed whenever this particular contract will be, or the particular swap will be involved between the two parties. So that is what basically what you have to keep in the mind. So sometimes also what basically will happen that there is a day count convention always we use, because the LIBOR is a money market rate and the LIBOR is always quoted as on an actual by 360 basis, that already I discussed with you whenever we are discussing about the bond market. So the LIBOR is always quoted on an actual by 360 basis. So March 15 to September 15, it is not basically exactly 180 days. So the actual cash flow, if you see, the actual cash flow will be 100, previous example, 0.042 into 184 divided by 360. That will be 2.1466. We have taken 2.1 randomly, but it will be exactly 2.1466. Okay. So that also sometimes we have to consider. So the fixed rate is paid in a swap transaction is always on the basis of the so day count convention also plays some role. And the fixed rate is usually quoted as actual by 365 or 30 by 360. It is not directly comparable with LIBOR because the LIBOR is paid in a full year. Okay, so there are certain issues what basically you want to keep in the mind. And another thing also you have you can always observe that or we can little bit discuss about the future prices, what basically we use in the market. So whenever we talk about the future prices, how the future price is determined, how the future price is determined. For example, forward price, future price, whatever you talk about, the future prices, let there are certain assets, certain securities which provide no regular income or no income. There are certain security which is securities providing no income, for example. So generally, if your S is equal to your spot price and your F is equal to your future price, then your F is equal to is generally S into 1 plus R to the power T. And here your R is equal to basically your risk-free rate. So if your S is equal to let 390, let T is equal to let 1 year, then R is equal to let 5%. Then your after 1 year, the future price should be 390 into 1 plus 0.05 to the power 1, obviously into 1.05 only, 1.05 only, that is 409.50. So the future price of that particular forward contract after 1 year will be 409.50. But if it is continuously compounded, then some change will be there. Then F is equal to your S0 e to the power RT. F is equal to S0 e to the power RT. So that means this equation basically tells the forward price and the spot price for any asset that provides no income has no storage cost, because financial asset has no storage cost. If you are a commodity and all these things, you have the warehousing cost and other cost is involved. But here it is basically does not provide any storage cost. But if there is a difference between these F and S0 e to the power RT, there is a possibility of the arbitrage opportunity. So let F is greater than S0 e to the power RT at the time of this particular maturity. So what this investor can do, the investor may buy the asset by borrowing the amount which is equal to S0 for a period of T at a risk-free rate and take a short position in the forward contract. So at the time of maturity, the asset will be delivered for a price of F and the amount borrowed will be repaid by paying an amount equal to S0 to the power RT, and the particular deal will result a net profit of F0 F minus S0 to the power RT. Right? So if it is less, let me give one example, then it will be more clear for you. If there is a deviation, whether f is greater than s0 e to the power rt or f is less than s0 e to the power rt, there is a chance of the arbitrage opportunity. And how this arbitrage opportunity is created? There is a stock. The spot underlying asset is the stock. Spot price is rupees 40. Let in the market, the 3 months forward price is available of that particular stock is 43. I will take the risk-free rate is 5%. Okay. Is there any arbitrage opportunity? Yes or no? Tell me. Yes or no? Hello? Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Arbitrage opportunity इसमें आएगा कि नहीं आएगा? Is there any arbitrage opportunity? आएगा? You can find out your, you are assuming continuously compounded. This is all continuously compounded. Then S0 e to the power RT, if you find this is 40 e to the power RT means 0.05 into 3 months मतलब कितना year है? 3 by 12, right? 1 by 4 into 0.05. Then if you find this value, then what basically you will find that your S0 e to the power RT is not equal to 43. So then what basically you can do in that case, you borrow 40 rupees. Borrow 40 rupees at a rate of 5% for 3 months. Buy 1 unit of the asset. Then what you can do, enter into the forward contract to sell the asset in 3 months at a rupees of 43. This will happen now, your action now. And after 3 months, when the 3 months will be over, the action in 3 months, that what will happen? Sell the asset at a rupees of 43. Okay. Because you have entered into the forward contract to sell the asset in 3 months, you got 43. Then use your 40.50 to repay the loan amount. Then profit will be your 43 minus 40.5. That will give you 2.5. Is it clear? Ravi?
Yes, sir.
So if your S0 e to the power RT is not equal to F, the forward price is not equal to the spot price, you are getting the future price not equal to that S0 e to the power RT, assuming that it is continuously compounded, then there is a possibility of arbitrage opportunity. For example, in the same example, if I say, let the forward price is 39, this will be also not equal to this S0 e to the power RT. Then what you will do? Here this is more than this, but let this is less than this. Then what you will do? What is your strategy to generate some profit? Your forward price is let 39. The spot price already I told you that is 40. Interest rate is 0.05 or 5%, and period is 3 months. What you have 2 period here. What action you will take now? Short or sell 1 unit of asset, get 40 rupees. Invest that 40 rupees. Invest 40 rupees at 5% for 3 months. Then enter into the forward contracts to buy the asset in 3 months at a price of rupees 39. Then in 3 months period, what will happen? Buy the asset at a rupees of 39. Close the short position. Okay. How much you receive? Receive 40.5. Whatever investment you have made at 5%. Then profit will be your 40.5 minus 39. That is 1.5. Is it clear? Yes or no? Hello? Priyansa? Huh? Devika?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So here also there are, if you are particular, this thing happens because there is no regular flow of income which can happen like stocks and all these things. But if you are going for a kind of asset where it gives a kind of known income like preference shares, how much basically you can generate from the preference share, that is known to you. Then how the future price is calculated. So in this case, your F is equal to your S e to the power RT. That is for the asset which provides known regular income. But if you know this, a kind of income which regularly the asset is giving, like your preference shares, coupon bearing bonds and all these things, then your F is equal to S minus I e to the power RT. What this I represents? The I is basically the present value of income from investment during the life of the future contract. That means if let S is equal to let 900, right? Then let R is equal to 4%, T is equal to let 0.75. Okay. Then you know that what is the known income you are receiving from that particular kind of investment. Then you find out that I apart from there. Then accordingly, you can find out this future price. Let I is equal to the 40 e to the power minus 0.03 into 4 by 12. That is 39.6. Okay. So then your F will be basically 900 minus 39.6 e to the power 0.04 into 0.75, that is 886.60. If this can happen with respect to that assets which provide a kind of regular amount of fixed income, like your preference shares and the dividends and coupons, and because this is the coupon that we are receiving per annum, 40 rupees at a rate of 4%. Let the par value of the bond is 1000, generally we consider, then this is the way basically we can calculate the present value for that particular period, that is your 0.75, that is, then accordingly we can discount it with respect to this. So then if you know the yield, for example, the income is known when as a percentage of the asset price. It is the actual nominal income what this I represents. But if you know the yield, then nothing else, it is basically F0, F is equal to S e to the power R minus Q T. Let the asset price S is equal to let 25. Let the risk-free rate is 10%. Let T is equal to 6 months, that means 0.5. Let your regular income is 2% of the asset price. 2% of the asset price. If you are going for a continuous compounding, then your what is the Q? Q will be your 2 ln 1 plus 0.04 divided by 2. Then that will be 0.0396. Then your F will be 25 e to the power 0.10 minus 0.0396 into 0.5. That will be 25.77. So instead of using the exact, basically what we call it, the 2%, what we have done, we have continuously compounded it. So accordingly, we got the Q from there. So that is the 2 ln 1 plus 0.04 divided by, I forgot, it is ln 1 plus 0.04 by 2. ln 1 plus 0.04 by 2, then we got 0.0396. Then accordingly, we got this future value. So that's why the formula for the future contracts and all these things, it is basically the valuation of the forward contracts. If you are going for a future contracts, then the forward contract is worth 0 when it is first negotiated. Later, the value can be positive or negative. But the value of a long forward contract, these are all the future contract valuations, whatever we have made. So the value of a long forward contract, if it is a long forward, because we have exercise price also, then it is F minus K e to the power minus RT. If it is a short forward contract, then it is K minus F e to the power minus RT. K represents the strike price. K represents the strike price. So that actually you can keep in the mind. So these are the valuation or the future price of a long forward contract. This is the future price of the short forward contract. So this is the way these are the basic concepts or the notations what I have said with you. So this is the way the future prices are determined on the basis of the nature of the assets, the prices change. And this is the way the different kind of contracts are designed, and the basic objective of the use of these particular contracts are different on the basis of the usability of that. So the use of swaps are different than the use of the forwards. So that's why, but the major objective of the derivatives contract is basically hedging. So mostly the derivatives is one of the biggest instrument which is used for the financial market. Derivatives are mostly used for the hedging purpose to minimize the risk in the market. Okay, we can stop here. The other things I will discuss in the next class. So